There's something quietly intriguing about people who rarely share photos of themselves online, in a world where birthdays, coffee cups, gym mirrors, and airport lounges are documented almost reflexively. Their absence stands out, not loudly, not rebelliously, just subtly. You scroll through your feed and realize you know what they think about politics, music, or work, but you have no clear picture of their face in the past year. It makes you wonder what's behind that choice. Is it insecurity? Privacy? Confidence? Indifference? The instinct is to assume it must mean something simple. Maybe they're shy, maybe they don't like how they look, but human behavior is rarely that one-dimensional. In fact, the psychology of people who rarely share photos of themselves online often reveals something more layered than either insecurity or superiority. To understand it, you have to look at what posting a photo actually represents. When someone shares an image of themselves, especially on social media, they are not just sharing a moment. They are managing perception. They are participating in a subtle social contract that says, "This is how I would like to be seen." Even candid photos are filtered through selection. You choose the angle, the lighting, the version of yourself that feels closest to acceptable. It's a curated glimpse of identity. For some people, this process feels natural. For others, it feels like performance. There are individuals who experience a quiet discomfort with turning themselves into content. It's not always about disliking attention. It's about the subtle shift that happens when a private moment becomes a public artifact. They may enjoy taking photos. They may even enjoy being photographed. But the act of uploading it into a permanent, searchable, commentable space feels like crossing a boundary. Their internal world tells them, this doesn't need to be broadcast to be real. Psychologically, this can be linked to something called self-concept clarity. People with a stable sense of identity often feel less need to seek external validation. That doesn't mean they never doubt themselves. It means their sense of who they are is less dependent on feedback loops when someone posts a photo and waits for likes. Even unconsciously, the brain experiences a small dopamine cycle. It anticipates approval. For some personalities, that cycle becomes reinforcing. For others, it feels unnecessary or even slightly destabilizing. There are people who instinctively guard their image because they understand how quickly perception can be distorted online. A single photo can invite assumptions about lifestyle, about success, about relationships. They may have witnessed how easily narratives are constructed from limited information, so instead of feeding that machine, they opt out quietly. It's not that they have nothing to show, it's that they don't feel compelled to translate their existence into a visual statement. Interestingly, research around personality traits shows that individuals who score higher in introversion are often more selective about self-disclosure, especially in public forums, but introversion alone doesn't explain it. Some extroverts rarely post personal photos as well. The deeper distinction often lies in how someone relates to visibility. For certain people, visibility feels energizing. For others, it feels exposing. Exposure is not always about fear. Sometimes it's about control. When you share an image of yourself, you surrender a degree of control over how it will be interpreted. People can screenshot it, analyze it, misread it. For someone who values autonomy over their narrative, that surrender might feel uncomfortable. They prefer conversations that unfold in context, where tone and nuance exist. A still image can't defend itself. There's also the matter of internal versus external orientation. Some people process life inwardly. They experience moments deeply but privately. When something meaningful happens, a trip, a promotion, a personal milestone, their first instinct is not to document it for others but to sit with it. The memory feels complete without external acknowledgement. In psychological terms, they derive satisfaction more from intrinsic reward than social reinforcement. This doesn't mean they judge those who post frequently. It simply means their motivational structure is different. They might scroll and appreciate others' updates without feeling the urge to reciprocate in the same format. Their silence online is not emptiness. It's selectivity. Another layer to consider is emotional safety. Social platforms have blurred the lines between acquaintances and close relationships. A single post may be seen by colleagues, distant relatives, old classmates, and strangers simultaneously. For someone who values contextual intimacy, sharing different sides of themselves with different circles, that flattening can feel unnatural. Not posting becomes a way of preserving relational boundaries. There's also an understated confidence in some of these individuals, not the loud, performative kind, but a grounded comfort with not being constantly visible. In a culture that often equates visibility with relevance, choosing privacy can be a quiet statement of self-trust. It says, I exist fully, even when I am not displayed. That kind of confidence doesn't need to be announced, it's felt internally. Of course, it would be simplistic to ignore that for some people. Not posting photos can stem from insecurity. Body image concerns are real. Fear of negative judgment is real. Social anxiety can make the idea of public self-presentation exhausting. But even then, the psychology is more compassionate than critical. Avoidance can be a protective mechanism. If someone has learned that visibility invites scrutiny, they may withdraw from it as a form of self-preservation. What's interesting is how observers interpret this absence. When someone rarely shares photos, others often project meaning onto it. They might assume mystery, arrogance, sadness, or depth. In reality, the choice may be far less dramatic. It might simply reflect a different relationship with attention. Attention, in the digital age, has become a form of currency. Photos are one of the most direct ways to claim it. When someone chooses not to, they are, in a sense, stepping out of that economy. They're not competing for visibility. They're not updating their personal brand. They may still participate online sharing ideas, humor, information, but they keep their physical image largely offline. It's a subtle separation between their thoughts and their appearance. There's something psychologically grounding about that separation. It reduces the pressure to maintain a visual narrative. You don't have to look a certain way to justify your presence. You don't have to prove you're living well. Your life unfolds without the constant lens of potential documentation. In conversations with people who rarely post photos of themselves, you often hear a similar sentiment. They say things like, "I just don't feel the need," or "I prefer to keep some things private." It's not dramatic, it's measured. They're not making a statement against social media. They're making a decision about how much of themselves they want to distribute. At a deeper level, this behavior can reflect a desire to be known beyond appearance. When your image isn't constantly circulating, people engage with your words, your ideas, your presence in a different way. The interaction becomes less about aesthetics and more about substance. That doesn't mean appearance doesn't matter in real life. It means it's not the primary medium through which they seek connection. There's also the possibility that these individuals value permanence differently. Photos online can feel strangely detached from time. They linger long after the moment has passed. For someone who sees experiences as intimate and temporal, the idea of freezing them into a permanent public archive can feel misaligned. In the end, the psychology of people who rarely share photos of themselves online isn't defined by a single trait. It's a combination of boundaries, identity stability, comfort with privacy, and sometimes vulnerability. It reflects how differently people relate to visibility and validation. Perhaps the more interesting question is not why they don't post, but why it stands out when they don't. What does it say about our expectations that visibility has become the default? Maybe their quiet absence reveals something about the culture itself, a culture that often equates sharing with existing. Some people simply prefer to exist without constant display. Their memories are kept in conversations, in private albums, in lived moments that don't need a caption, and there's something quietly powerful about that. It reminds us that a life can be full, meaningful, and deeply connected even if it rarely appears on a screen.